anyone who discovered the ledger became a threat.
You're saying I'm the threat? Then what happens now?
I was sent to retrieve the ledger and eliminate the threat.
Which is me.
Yes.
He had just one job: walk into a quiet archive in Seoul, find the document, retrieve it, and eliminate the only witness. The witness was a librarian. She had no idea what she had found. She had no idea the man who came to her archive every morning wasn't a researcher at all. He had been sent to make sure she never learned the truth. But then she looked him in the eyes and asked one simple question. Who are you, really? In that moment, everything changed. Now he must choose between the organization that raised him and the woman he was sent to kill. What happens when the most feared enforcer in Seoul refuses to complete his mission? Stay with me until the end, because this story is not what you think. Subscribe and hit that bell, and let's get into it. The community archive on the eastern side of Seoul was not the kind of place that made it onto maps. It did not need to be. The people who came to it already knew where it was. Researchers, historians, the occasional family tracing a lineage, the specific, quiet category of person who understood that the most important stories were usually the ones that had never been written down anywhere official and had ended up, by accident or intention, in a donated box in a building that most of the city drove past without looking at. Grace had worked there for 2 years. She had come to Seoul on a research fellowship that ended and had stayed because the work was good and the city had gotten under her skin in the way that certain cities do. Not loudly, not dramatically, just gradually and then completely. She spoke conversational Korean that made her colleagues smile and her landlord relax, and the elderly donors who brought in boxes of family history look at her with the specific warmth of people who are surprised and pleased in equal measure. She loved her work with the uncomplicated sincerity of someone who had figured out early what they were for and had the good fortune to spend their days doing it. On a Thursday morning in early autumn, she pulled open the third box in a new donation batch, materials from the estate of a recently deceased Seoul businessman, passed on by a family that had no idea what was inside them and simply wanted them preserved somewhere, and began working through the contents methodically, the way she worked through everything. She did not notice anything unusual that Thursday, or the Friday. It was not until the following Monday, 3 boxes in and 2 cups of coffee deep, that she found the ledger. She almost passed it over. It looked like the others, same worn cover, same faded ink, same general texture of a document that had been important to someone once and had been waiting patiently ever since for someone to understand why. She opened it out of habit rather than expectation. She read the first page, then the second. Then she set it down on the table in front of her and looked at it for a moment with the specific expression of someone who has just found something that does not belong in the story they thought they were reading. She picked up her pen. She made a note. She set the ledger aside in its own separate pile. The pile she kept for things that needed more time and more attention than the ordinary flow of work allowed for. Then she went back to the box and kept working. She did not know yet what she had found. She did not know that 3 floors above the city, in a building whose address did not appear on any public record, a man named Chairman Lim was reading a report that told him the document his organization had been looking for had surfaced inside a community archive donation batch. She did not know that Chairman Lim had put down the report, folded his hands on the desk in front of him, and said simply to the man standing across from him, "Send Sue." Sue received the assignment at 7 in the evening on a Monday. He read the briefing once: location, target, nature of the document, nature of the required resolution, and then set it down on the table in front of him and sat with it for a moment the way he sat with every assignment before he moved on it. Not hesitating, just processing, making sure he understood every variable before he committed to a direction. The document was a ledger, decades old, recording transactions between Chairman Lim's organization and a network of government officials that would, if it surfaced in the right hands at the right time, cause a very specific and very uncontrolled kind of damage to everything the organization had spent 30 years building. The archivist currently processing the donation batch it had ended up in was a black woman named Grace. Late 20s. No criminal connections. No political affiliations. No apparent awareness of what she had. According to the briefing, she was simply doing her job. Cataloging, filing, preserving. The plan was simple. Establish a cover. Gain access to the archive. Identify which box the document was in. Retrieve it quietly. Assess and resolve the threat. Sue had completed more complicated assignments than this one in his sleep. He arrived at the community archive the following morning at 9 o'clock, carrying a leather portfolio and a backstory he had constructed on the way over, a historical researcher working on a project about mid-century Seoul commercial networks, looking for primary source materials. Grace was at her desk when he came in. She looked up. He gave her the cover story. She listened with the focused attention of someone who takes every visitor seriously regardless of whether they are interesting, asked 2 specific questions about the nature of his research that he answered without hesitation, and then stood up and said, "Let me show you around." She showed him around for 45 minutes. He had expected to be in the archive for 2 hours maximum. He was there for 4. Not because the document was difficult to locate. He had narrowed it to one of 3 possible boxes by the end of the first hour. But because Grace talked about the archive the way people talk about things they genuinely love, and there was something in the specific quality of her attention to the materials, to the work, to the small precise details of what each document meant in the context of the larger story it belonged to, that was genuinely difficult to move away from. He came back the next day. Research takes time, he told himself. He needed to confirm which box. He needed to be careful. He needed to be patient. He came back the day after that, and the day after that. On the 4th day, he sat across from Grace at the research table while she cataloged a 1960s shipping ledger and explained to him why the handwriting style told her something specific about who had filled it in and when. And he found himself listening not because it was useful, but because she was interesting, and he had not found a person genuinely interesting in a very long time. He went home that evening and sat with that feeling for a while. Then he picked up his phone and called Min. "I need more time," he said. Min was quiet for a moment on the other end. "Chairman Lim is asking for a timeline. Tell him the situation requires patience," Sue said. "Tell him I am handling it." He hung up. He looked out the window at Seoul. The city he had been born into, grown up inside, operated within for his entire professional life, and thought about a woman in an archive who tucked pens behind her ear and talked about handwriting analysis like it was the most interesting thing in the world. He went back to the archive the next morning. Grace noticed things. That was not a skill she had developed professionally. It was simply who she was, the way some people are wired from the beginning. She had been the child who noticed when the picture on the wall was tilted 2 degrees. The student who noticed when a source contradicted itself 3 pages after it cited itself. The archivist who noticed when a document's paper stock did not match the decade its ink suggested it came from. She noticed things. She filed them. She waited until she had enough of them to know what she was actually looking at. She had been filing things about Sue since the 2nd day. Not because anything he did was obviously wrong. Quite the opposite. His cover was good. His questions were specific enough to be credible and general enough not to be suspicious. His knowledge of mid-century Seoul commercial history was real, not performed. She had tested it twice with references that a person who did not know the subject would not have caught, and he had caught both of them without appearing to notice that he was being tested. But there were other things. The way his eyes moved when he entered the archive each morning. A single sweep of the room that was too practiced and too complete to belong to a man who was only there to look at old documents. The way he positioned himself at the research table. Always with his back to the wall and a clear line of sight to the door, which researchers did not do, but people who had spent a long time in situations where exits mattered did. The way he listened to her talk. Genuinely, attentively, in a way that she appreciated, but with the occasional micro-pause of someone who was listening on 2 levels simultaneously, the surface level and the one underneath it that was always calculating something else. And the questions. Subtle, very subtle, the kind that a less careful person would not have noticed at all. but they kept returning in different forms to the same section of the donation batch. The boxes from the businessman's estate. He never asked about them directly. He never showed obvious interest. But every conversation, however it started, found its way back in that direction eventually. She filed all of it. By the end of the first week, she had enough. She did not know what he was looking for. She did not know who he was or what any of it meant. But she knew, with the specific certainty of someone whose entire professional skill set is built around knowing when a document is telling the truth and when it is performing one, that the man who came to her archive every day was not a historical researcher. She decided to find out what he actually was. On the 8th day, Sue arrived at the archive to find Grace's desk empty. Not unusual. She moved around the space constantly, cataloging, retrieving, moving between the front room and the storage rooms at the back. He sat down at the research table and opened his portfolio and waited. 10 minutes passed. 15. He went to find her. She was not in the main storage room. She was not in the reading room. She was not in the small office at the back where she sometimes retreated to make phone calls or eat lunch at her desk. He found her in the document processing room. The room where new donations were unpacked and initially sorted before being moved into the archive proper. She was sitting on the floor, surrounded by the contents of one of the estate donation boxes. The third box, the one he had identified as the most likely location of the ledger, spread carefully around her on the clean floor in the organized arrangement of someone who has been working through contents methodically for a while. And in her hands, open across her lap, the pen from behind her ear now in her right hand, making careful notes in the small notebook she always carried. The ledger. He stood in the doorway. She had not heard him come in. She was reading. Not skimming. Reading, with the complete focused attention she brought to everything that warranted it, her pen moving occasionally to make a note. Her expression carrying the specific quality of someone working through something that does not quite add up and is determined to find the point at which it does. He stood very still. He had two options. He could step back out of the doorway and come up with a reason to have been elsewhere. Or he could walk in. He had taken one step backward when she looked up. She looked at him. He looked at her. The ledger was open across her lap. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Then Grace said, quietly, without any particular accusation in her voice, just the straightforward tone of someone who has been waiting for a conversation to become possible and has now decided it is. "You have been looking for this." It was not a question. Sue stood in the doorway and looked at the woman sitting on the floor of the document processing room with the ledger across her lap, and her pen in her hand, and her eyes on his face with the specific expression of someone who notices things and has been noticing him for 8 days and has just run out of patience for waiting to find out what she has noticed means. He made his decision. He walked in. He sat down on the floor across from her, which was not something he planned to do, just what the situation required, and looked at her directly. "Yes," he said. She looked at him for a moment. "What is it?" she asked. "Meaning the ledger. Something that was not supposed to exist anymore," he said carefully. "But it does exist," she said. "I am holding it." "Yes," he said. "And the people who want it back," she said slowly, "are they the kind of people who are going to want to make sure I cannot talk about having held it?" He looked at her. He did not answer, which was, she understood, its own answer. She looked down at the ledger in her lap for a moment, then back up at him. "Who are you actually?" she said. He held her gaze. And then he told her. Not everything. There were things that telling would not help and might harm. But enough. The organization. Chairman Lim. The assignment. What the ledger contained and why it mattered, and what the people who wanted it back were willing to do to get it. She listened to all of it without interrupting. Without her expression shifting into the fear or the panic or the performed calm that people reach for when they find out something that frightens them. She sat on the floor of the document processing room with the ledger in her lap and her pen in her hand and listened the way she listened to everything, completely, filing it, building the picture. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. "You were sent to retrieve it," she said. and to eliminate the threat. Yes, he said. I am the threat, she said. Yes, he said. Then, carefully, because it was the most important thing he was going to say, and he needed it to land correctly, I am not going to do that. She looked at him for a long time. Why, she said. He thought about 8 days of walking into an archive every morning. He thought about a 1960s shipping ledger and what handwriting style could tell you about the person who filled it in. He thought about the specific way she noticed things. The 2 tests she had run on him in the first week that he had caught and said nothing about, because catching them told him something about her that he had not expected and had not known what to do with. Because you are the first person I have encountered in a very long time, he said quietly, who noticed everything and said nothing and waited to understand it properly before deciding what to do about it. He paused. That is not a threat. That is the most careful person I have ever been in the same room with. Grace looked at him across the floor of the document processing room. Then she looked down at the ledger. Then she looked back up at him. I need to come with you, she said. Not asked. Said, in the tone of someone who has already worked through the logic of the situation and arrived at the only reasonable conclusion. Yes, he said. And you have a plan, she said. I am making one, he said honestly. She considered that for a moment. All right, she said. She closed the ledger. She stood up. She picked up her leather tote bag from the corner where she had left it that morning and put her notebook inside it and the pen behind her ear and looked at him with the specific expression of someone who has accepted a situation and is now focused entirely on navigating it. Lead the way, she said. He stood up. He led the way. The safe house was a small apartment on the 3rd floor of a building in a part of the city that was neither notable nor forgettable. The specific kind of neighborhood that exists in every large city, the kind that does not draw attention because there is nothing about it designed to draw attention. The building was old but maintained. The apartment had 2 rooms, a kitchen, a bathroom, and windows that looked out onto a narrow street where nothing much happened at any particular time of day. Sue had kept it for 4 years. It was registered under a name that did not belong to him, and paid for through channels that led nowhere useful if anyone tried to follow them. Chairman Lim did not know about it. Min knew. Min was the only person outside of Sue himself who knew about most things, which was why Sue had called him from the car on the way over and said simply, I need you to watch the building. Not report to anyone. Just watch. Min had said, understood, without asking anything else. That was the thing about Min. Grace sat in the passenger seat during the drive and looked out the window at Seoul moving past and said nothing for a long time. He did not fill the silence. He had learned. In 8 days, which was a very short time to learn things about a person, and yet somehow sufficient, that Grace's silences were not empty. They were working silences. She was thinking the way she thought about everything. Methodically, completely, building the picture from the available materials before she committed to a position. The ledger, she said finally. The transactions in it. They are current, not historical. Yes, he said. Which means the people involved are still alive, she said. Most of them, he said. And still in the positions they were in when those transactions were made, she said. Some of them in higher ones, he said. She was quiet for a moment. That is why it matters so much, she said. Not to him. To herself, completing a thought out loud. It is not history. It is evidence. Yes, he said. She looked out the window. How many people know I have seen it? She asked. Chairman Lim knows a document processor at the archive has encountered the donation batch, he said carefully. He does not yet know the specific extent of your engagement with it. But he will, she said. Eventually, he said. Yes. She nodded slowly. Filed it. Moved to the next thing. And you, she said. What does Chairman Lim think you are doing right now? Handling the situation, he said. Which you are, she said. Just not in the way he intended. Correct, he said. She looked at him then, a long sideways look from the passenger seat that he felt more than saw. Why, she said. For the second time. The same question she had asked on the floor of the document processing room, and he had answered it there, but she was asking it again now in a different way. Not what is your reason, but what does it cost you, and do you understand what you have just done? He kept his eyes on the road. Because it was the right thing, he said simply. She was quiet for a moment. That is a very expensive reason in your world, she said. I know, he said. She turned back to the window. Neither of them said anything else until they arrived. The apartment was clean and spare, the specific minimalism of a space that has been maintained for practical use rather than lived in with any comfort. 2 chairs, a table, a small couch, a kitchen with enough in it for basic meals if you were not particular about variety. Grace walked through it once, the same systematic way she walked through everything, looking, noting, understanding the space, and then set her tote bag down on the table and sat in one of the chairs and looked at him. Tell me everything, she said. Not the version you told me on the floor. Everything. He sat across from her. And he told her. It took an hour. Chairman Lim. The organization. Its structure, its reach, the specific network of people and influence and money that had been built over 30 years into something that functioned inside Seoul's legitimate world so seamlessly that most of the city had no idea it existed at all. The ledger. Its origin, what it documented, who had kept it, and why, and how it had ended up in an estate donation rather than destroyed, which was what should have happened to it 20 years ago. He told her about his father. Not everything. Not the parts that were still too close to say out loud clearly, but enough. His father had been inside the organization before him, had brought him in at an age when the bringing in felt like an inheritance rather than a choice, had died inside it 3 years ago in a way that Sue had never fully made peace with. He told her about the assignment, the exact wording of it, what Chairman Lim had said, and what he had meant by the things he had not said directly, but that Sue, who had been reading Chairman Lim's silences for 12 years, had understood completely. When he finished, Grace sat with it for a moment. You have been inside this for 12 years, she said. Yes, he said. And in 12 years, she said carefully, has there been another moment when you did not do what the assignment required? He thought about it honestly. No, he said. She looked at him. Then why now, she said. He looked back at her. This woman sitting in a spare chair in a safe house apartment with her leather tote bag on the table and her pen behind her ear and her complete focused attention on his face, and thought about 8 days of walking into an archive, about a shipping ledger and what handwriting could tell you, about the 2 tests she had run on him that he had caught and said nothing about the specific quality of a person who notices everything and says nothing and waits to understand it properly. Because you deserved better than what the assignment required, he said simply. The apartment was very quiet. Outside, the narrow street below was doing what it always did. Nothing in particular, slowly, in the way of streets in parts of the city that exist to be driven through rather than arrived at. Grace looked at him for a long moment. Then she reached into her tote bag and pulled out her notebook. All right, she said. Then let us figure out what we are going to do about it. They worked through the night. Not the dramatic kind of working through the night. Not with urgency and raised voices and the specific tension of a thriller. More like the way Grace worked through everything. Methodically, patiently. Building the picture from the available materials, identifying what they had and what they needed and what the realistic options were given the constraints of the situation. She was, as it turned out, extremely good at this. Better than he had expected. Which was saying something, because he had already revised his expectations of her upwards significantly over the past 8 days. She laid out what she understood about the ledger, its contents, its implications, the specific names and figures that appeared most frequently, and what their current positions meant for the weight of the document as evidence. She asked questions about the organization's structure that were precise enough to suggest she had been building a picture of it in her head since the car, and had arrived at a reasonably accurate approximation of it already. She identified 3 realistic options for how the situation could resolve and the probable outcomes of each one. Sue listened to her work through it and felt something that was not quite admiration and not quite relief but somewhere between the two. The specific feeling of finding out that the person you are in a difficult situation with is more capable than the situation requires, which is the best possible thing to discover, and one of the rarest. The copy, she said at some point past midnight, looking up from her notebook. He looked at her. What copy? She held his gaze for a moment. I am going to need you to trust me, she said. I already trust you, he said. I drove you to a safe house instead of completing my assignment. That is not the same thing, she said. What I am about to tell you requires a different kind of trust. He looked at her steadily. Tell me. She reached into her tote bag. She pulled out a small USB drive and set it on the table between them. On the third day, she said, when I first found the ledger, before I fully understood what it was, I photographed it. I photograph every significant document I encounter as part of the cataloging process. Standard archival practice. She paused. Those photographs are on this drive. And a copy of this drive is currently in the possession of someone I trust completely, with instructions to act on the contents if they do not hear from me by a specific time every 48 hours. Sue looked at the USB drive on the table. Then he looked at her. You did that on the third day, he said. Yes, she said. Before you knew what it was, he said. Standard archival practice, she said again. Then, also I noticed you on the second day, and I am a very careful person. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he picked up the USB drive and turned it over in his hand once, and set it back down. This changes things, he said. I know, she said. That is why I did it. He looked at her across the table. This woman who had been 3 moves ahead of him since the second day of an assignment he had considered straightforward, and felt something settle in him that was neither the controlled stillness of his professional life nor the specific weight of the things he carried inside it, but something different from both. Something that felt, quietly and without announcement, like the beginning of trusting someone. Tell me about the contact, he said. She told him. He listened. And somewhere in the small apartment on the 3rd floor of an unremarkable building in an unremarkable part of Seoul, a plan began to take shape that neither of them had arrived there expecting to need, and that both of them, by the time the sun came up over the city outside the narrow street window, understood was their best and possibly only way through. The call from Min came at 6 in the morning. Sue was already awake. He had not slept, which was not unusual for him in situations that required continuous calculation, and this situation had required more continuous calculation than most. He was at the kitchen table with 2 cups of coffee that had gone cold and Grace's notebook open in front of him. She had fallen asleep on the small couch sometime around 3, still holding her pen, which he had removed from her hand carefully so it did not fall and wake her. He answered on the first ring. They found the building, Min said. No preamble. No softening. Just the information, clean and direct, the way Min communicated everything. How long? Sue said. 20 minutes, Min said. Maybe less. 3 cars. 6 people that I can see. Chairman Lim sent Cho. Cho. Sue absorbed that for a moment. Cho was the organization's second enforcer. Not as senior as Sue, but effective, and completely without the particular complication that had caused Sue to deviate from his assignment in the first place. Cho would complete the assignment. That was simply what Cho did. Are you made? Sue asked. No, Min said. I am 2 streets over. I can stay dark. Stay dark, Sue said. Do not engage. I need you available for something else. Understood, Min said. Then, carefully, in the specific tone of someone who has served alongside a person long enough to know when a question matters. Are you all right? Yes, Sue said. He hung up. He looked at Grace asleep on the couch, her leather tote bag on the floor beside her, her curls loose around her face, the specific stillness of someone who has processed an enormous amount of information in a short period of time and whose body has finally demanded its due regardless of the circumstances. He went and crouched beside the couch. Grace, he said quietly. She was awake immediately. Not the slow, confused waking of someone pulled out of deep sleep, but the fast, clean waking of someone whose mind had apparently stayed partially active even while her body rested. Her eyes opened and found his face, and she was present. Fully, within a second. "How long?" she said. 20 minutes, he said. "Less maybe." She sat up. She picked up her tote bag from the floor and checked that the notebook and the USB drive were inside it. She looked at him. "The plan we built last night," she said. "Are we ready to use it?" "Yes," he said. "Then tell me what I need to do," she said. They moved through the apartment with the specific efficiency of two people who have spent the night building a plan together and trust each other enough to execute it without needing to revisit the details. Sue gathered the few things that needed to leave with them. Grace pulled on her jacket and tucked her pen behind her ear and stood at the door with her tote bag on her shoulder, looking like someone about to go to work rather than someone about to walk out of a safe house ahead of 6 people sent to find her. He looked at her. "There is a service exit at the back of the building," he said. "Down the stairs, through the laundry room, out the side door onto the alley. You are going to walk. Not run. Walk. To the end of the alley and turn left. Min will be waiting 2 streets over in a gray car. And you," she said. "I am going to go out the front," he said. She looked at him. "That is not the same plan we built last night." "The plan we built last night assumed we had more time," he said. "This is the adjusted version. The adjusted version involves you walking out the front of the building into 6 people sent to find us," she said. "Into 6 people sent to find you," he said. "I am not the assignment. I am the person who was supposed to complete it. That distinction gives me approximately 4 minutes of conversation before the situation changes." 4 minutes, she said. "Enough," he said. She looked at him for a long moment. The full direct look that he had come to understand meant she was running every variable and arriving at the same conclusion he had. "This is not a good plan," she said. "No," he agreed. "But it is the only one," she said. "Yes," he said. She held his gaze for one more moment. Then she said, "Do not do anything that cannot be undone." He looked at her. "Go," he said quietly. "Min is waiting." She went. He watched the stairwell door close behind her. Then he turned, straightened his jacket, and walked to the front door of the apartment. He went out the front. Cho was in the lobby. Of course he was. Cho was methodical in the way that people are methodical when they have been doing one specific thing for a long time and have optimized every part of how they do it. He had 2 men in the lobby and 2 on the street, and 2 covering the back, which meant Sue calculated in the half second between recognizing Cho across the lobby and Cho recognizing him that the service exit was not as clear as he had told Grace it was. He kept walking toward Cho. Cho looked at him with the expression of a man who has been sent to clean up a situation and has just encountered the situation standing upright and walking toward him. "Sue," Cho said carefully. "Cho," Sue said. He stopped a few feet away. Close enough for a conversation. Far enough that neither of them had to make an immediate decision about what the conversation was going to require. "Chairman Lim sent me to complete the assignment," Cho said. "Not accusatory. Just factual. The way Cho communicated everything." "I know," Sue said. "The document," Cho said. "And the archivist." "The archivist is not here," Sue said. Cho looked at him. "Where is she?" "Handled," Sue said. The word that in their world meant one specific thing, and that Sue said now with the complete controlled stillness of someone who has spent 12 years making people believe what he needed them to believe in difficult situations. Cho studied him for a moment. The specific studying of someone who is very good at what they do, trying to determine whether the person in front of them is telling the truth or performing one. "And the document?" Cho said. Sue reached into his jacket and produced the ledger. He held it out. Cho took it. He looked at it for a moment, confirming. Then he looked back at Sue. "Chairman Lim will want a full report," he said. "He will have one," Sue said. Another long moment. Cho was not satisfied. Sue could see it, the specific quality of an unsatisfied man choosing to accept an answer because the alternative was a confrontation with someone whose capabilities he respected and whose deviation from the assignment he could not yet fully explain. The archivist, Cho said one more time. Quieter. More careful. Handled, Sue said again. The same word. The same stillness. Cho looked at him for a long moment. Then he nodded once. He walked past Sue toward the stairs. His men followed. Sue stood in the lobby alone and listened to their footsteps on the stairs above him. Going up to an apartment that was empty and clean and contained nothing that would tell them anything he did not want them to know. Then he walked out of the building, turned right, away from where Min was waiting, and pulled out his phone. He called Chairman Lim's direct line. It rang twice. Sue, Chairman Lim said. The document has been retrieved, Sue said. Cho has it. The situation has been resolved. A pause. Brief. The pause of a man who is calculating whether what he is being told matches what he sent Cho to confirm. And the archivist, Chairman Lim said. Handled, Sue said. For the third time. With the same word and the same stillness, and the full understanding that he was spending something he could not get back. The specific currency of trust that 12 years inside an organization accumulates, and that a single deviation can empty. Another pause. Longer this time. Good. Chairman Lim said finally. He hung up. Sue stood on the street outside the building and looked at Seoul waking up around him. The city indifferent and unhurried, and completely unaware of the conversation that had just happened in a lobby on an unremarkable street. And understood two things simultaneously. The first was that he had bought Grace time. Enough time for the plan they had built last night to be set in motion properly. Enough time for the copy of the ledger on the USB drive and the contact who held it to become the leverage that changed the entire geometry of the situation. The second was that Chairman Lim was not satisfied. The pause had been too long. The calculation behind it had been visible even through the phone. Sue had 12 years of reading Chairman Lim's silences, and this one said, I am accepting this for now. I am not accepting it permanently. The clock had not stopped. It had just been reset. He turned and walked in the direction of where Min was waiting, and thought about a woman with a leather tote bag and a pen behind her ear who had been 3 moves ahead of him since the second day of an assignment he had considered straightforward. He hoped she was in the gray car. He hoped Min had gotten her out clean. He walked faster. Min had gotten her out clean. She was in the back seat of the gray car 2 streets over, tote bag in her lap. Notebook open, pen in hand. Writing something with the focused attention of someone who has processed the last 20 minutes and is now documenting it while the details are still precise. She looked up when he got in. She looked at him the way she looked at everything. Completely, reading the available information, arriving at her own conclusions before he said anything. The front of the building, she said. How did it go? Cho has the ledger, he said. She looked at him. You gave it to them, she said. Yes, he said. Which means the copy is now the only leverage we have, she said. Yes, he said. She was quiet for a moment. Are we safe? She asked. He thought about Chairman Lim's pause. About the specific length of it and what lived inside that length. For now, he said honestly. Not permanently. She nodded. She looked back down at her notebook. She wrote one more thing. Then she closed it and looked at him. Then we need to move quickly, she said. Yes, he said. Min, she said, looking at the front seat. How fast can you get us to where we need to go? Min glanced in the rear view mirror. The blank watchful expression that Sue had known for years softening very slightly at the edges in a way that almost nobody would have noticed. Fast, Min said. Good, Grace said. She opened her notebook again. The gray car pulled away into Seoul traffic and disappeared into the city. The contact's name was Dr. Yoon. Not a criminal. Not a political operative. Not anyone connected to the world that had been closing in around Grace since the moment she opened a donated ledger on a Monday morning and found something that was not supposed to exist anymore. Dr. Yoon was a professor of contemporary Korean history at one of Seoul's most respected universities. A small, precise woman in her 60s who had spent 40 years documenting the things that powerful people preferred remained undocumented, and who had, over the course of a long career, developed the specific fearlessness of someone who has been threatened enough times to have stopped finding it surprising. Grace had met her 18 months ago at an archival conference. They had talked for 3 hours over dinner about the ethics of preservation. What you keep, what you destroy, what you protect, and from whom, and at what cost to yourself. Dr. Yoon had given Grace her card at the end of the evening and said simply, "If you ever find something that needs to be in safer hands than your own, call me." Grace had kept the card. She had called her from the archive on the 3rd day, before she fully understood what she had found, because she understood enough to know that she wanted a copy of it somewhere that was not only in her possession. Dr. Yoon had asked no questions. She had simply said, "Send it. I will keep it safe until you tell me what to do with it." That had been 11 days ago. Now Grace sat in the back of Min's gray car with her notebook open, and her phone in her hand, and the specific calm of someone executing a plan they have been building toward, consciously and unconsciously, since the moment they understood the shape of what they were inside. She called Dr. Yoon. The professor answered on the 2nd ring. "I wondered when you would call," Dr. Yoon said. Her voice was the same as Grace remembered. Unhurried, precise, carrying the authority of someone who has spent a lifetime being the most prepared person in any given room. "The situation has moved faster than I expected," Grace said. "It usually does," Dr. Yoon said. "Are you safe?" "For now," Grace said. She glanced at Sue beside her. "I have someone with me. Someone who is helping. I need to tell you what we need from you, and I need you to tell me if it is something you can do." "Tell me," Dr. Yoon said. Grace told her. She laid out the plan clearly and completely. What the ledger contained, who it implicated, what they needed Dr. Yoon to do with the copy, and when, and through which channels, and what the timing required to be for the leverage to work before Chairman Lim's patience ran out and the situation shifted into something that could not be managed from the outside. Dr. Yoon listened without interrupting. When Grace finished, there was a brief silence. Not hesitation, just the pause of someone running the variables the way Grace ran everything. "The names in the ledger," Dr. Yoon said. "You said some of them are in higher positions now than when the transactions were made." "Yes," Grace said. "How high?" Dr. Yoon said. Grace told her. A longer pause this time. "Grace," Dr. Yoon said carefully, "what you are describing, if this goes through the right channels, with the right documentation, this is not a scandal. This is a restructuring." "I know," Grace said. "It will not be quiet," Dr. Yoon said. "And it will not be fast. And the people inside it are going to look for the source." "I know that too," Grace said. "And you still want to do this," Dr. Yoon said. Grace looked out the window at Seoul moving past. She thought about a ledger on her lap on the floor of the document processing room and the specific moment she had understood what she was holding. She thought about what an archivist was for. The preservation of truth, the protection of record, the specific responsibility of being the person in whose hands something ended up that was never supposed to be found. "Yes," she said, "I still want to do this." Dr. Yoon was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Give me 48 hours. "You have 36, Grace said. A brief pause. 36, Dr. Yoon said. "I will call you." She hung up. Grace closed her phone and looked at Sue. He had been listening to all of it. Not pretending not to, just listening with the particular quality of attention she had come to recognize as simply how he processed things. His expression had not changed during the call. It never changed very much. But she had been reading him for 11 days now, and she could see the small specific things that moved underneath the stillness. 36 hours, he said. "Yes," she said. "And in 36 hours Chairman Lim is going to understand that the situation is not what I told him it was," he said. "Probably before that," she said honestly. He nodded. He looked out the window. "Sue," she said. He looked at her. "When this is done," she said carefully, "what happens to you?" He held her gaze. "That depends on how it is done," he said. "I mean with the organization," she said. "With Chairman Lim. You deviated from the assignment. You told him it was handled. When he finds out it was not, He will find out, Sue said simply. There is no version of the next 36 hours in which he does not find out. And then, she said. He was quiet for a moment. And then I will deal with it, he said. She looked at him steadily. That is not an answer. It is the only honest one I have right now, he said. She held his gaze for a moment longer. Then she opened her notebook. We need somewhere to be for 36 hours that Chairman Lim cannot find, she said. Min, she looked at the front seat. Do you have somewhere? Min glanced in the rear-view mirror. Yes, he said. Take us there, she said. Min took them there. It was a small house on the outskirts of the city. Min's, registered under his mother's name. The kind of place that existed at the end of a paper trail that required knowing where to look and having the specific patience to follow it all the way to the end, which Chairman Lim's people were capable of. But not in 36 hours. They had 36 hours. They spent them the way two people spend enforced time in a small space, when they have already been through enough together to have moved past the early careful politeness of people who do not know each other. Not entirely comfortably, but honestly, which was its own kind of comfort. Grace catalogued. It was simply what she did when she was thinking. She organized things, created systems, imposed order on available materials as a way of letting the deeper part of her mind work on the things that could not be organized. She reorganized Min's kitchen twice. He did not say anything about it. Sue watched her and thought about 12 years. 12 years inside an organization that had been decided for him before he was old enough to decide anything. 12 years of assignments completed and situations resolved, and the specific accumulation of a life that had been built entirely around function and almost not at all around anything else. He thought about his father. The hand on his shoulder in the photograph on his desk at the office he was probably not going to walk back into. The weight of everything passed down. The specific cost of inheriting something you did not choose. He thought about what Grace had said in the safe house. You could leave. I know. I just wanted to say it out loud so you knew someone had said it. He had been thinking about that sentence for 3 days. On the second evening, 30 hours in, 6 to go, Grace came and sat across from him at Min's kitchen table. She had her notebook, but she did not open it. She just sat across from him and looked at him in the direct way she looked at everything. Tell me something true, she said. He looked at her. About what, he said. Anything, she said. Something you have not told anyone. Not because it is a secret necessarily. Just because there has not been anyone to tell it to. He held her gaze for a long moment. Then he said, I used to want to be an architect. She looked at him. Before your father brought you in, she said. Before, he said. I was good at it. I liked the way it required you to think about structure and function and beauty simultaneously, as if those three things were not separate considerations, but one single problem. He paused. I was 17 when I stopped. Do you still think about it? She said. Sometimes, he said. When I am in a building that was designed by someone who understood all three things at once. I notice it. She was quiet for a moment. What building in Seoul does that for you, she said. He thought about it. He told her. She listened with the complete attention she gave everything that warranted it. And he found that talking about it, after 17 years of not talking about it, felt less like loss and more like something being returned to him that he had not known was still there. When he finished, she said, After this, whatever after this looks like, you should build something. He looked at her. That is a very optimistic statement, given the current situation, he said. I am a very optimistic person, given the current situation, she said. Then, I am also a very practical one, which is why I know that the optimism is only useful if the practical part works. So, she opened her notebook. Let us make sure the practical part works. He almost smiled. She looked up from the notebook and caught it. The almost smile, the one that was the closest thing to fully present he ever looked. And she said nothing about it, just looked back down at the notebook. But he noticed that she was, very slightly, smiling too. Dr. Yoon called at hour 34. Grace answered immediately. It is moving, Dr. Yoon said, without preamble. The voice of someone who has spent 34 hours in motion and is reporting from the middle of it rather than the end. The documentation is with 3 separate journalists, none of whom know about the others. 2 legal teams have been briefed. The regulatory body has received a preliminary notification. A pause. Grace. This is going to be very loud. I know, Grace said. The people in that ledger are going to look for the source, Dr. Yoon said. They are going to look very hard. Let them look, Grace said. The source is an archive. Archives keep records. That is what they are for. A pause. You sound very calm, Dr. Yoon said. I am terrified, Grace said. But I am also right. And those 2 things can be true at the same time. Dr. Yoon was quiet for a moment. Yes, she said. They can. Another pause. Stay safe, Grace. I will, Grace said. Thank you. She hung up. She looked at Sue across the kitchen table. It is moving, she said. He nodded. Then Chairman Lim is going to know very soon, he said. Yes, she said. And we need to be ready for what that means, he said. Yes, she said. She looked at him steadily across the table. This man who had walked into her archive 11 days ago with a leather portfolio and a cover story and had ended up sitting across from her in a kitchen at the end of a paper trail, 34 hours into a plan that was either going to work or wasn't, with the specific expression of someone who has made a decision they cannot unmake and has made peace with the cost of it. Sue, she said. He looked at her. Whatever happens next, she said carefully, I want you to know something. He waited. You came to my archive to eliminate a threat, she said, and instead you became the reason the threat survived long enough to mean something. She paused. That matters. Whatever it costs. It matters. He looked at her for a long moment. The kitchen was very quiet. Outside Min's small house on the outskirts of Seoul, the city hummed in the middle distance. Indifferent, unhurried, completely unaware of a document that was currently moving through 3 separate journalists and 2 legal teams and a regulatory body, and was about to become the loudest thing in it. Thank you, Sue said quietly. She nodded once. Then she opened her notebook. Now, she said, let us talk about what we do when Chairman Lim calls. He leaned forward. They got to work. Chairman Lim called at hour 36. Not a minute before. Not a minute after. Which told Sue everything he needed to know about how the last 36 hours had gone on Chairman Lim's end. The precision of it. The specific controlled fury of a man who had been watching something unfold that he could not stop and had waited until the exact moment he calculated that calling would give him the maximum available leverage before making the call. Sue answered on the first ring. Grace was sitting across the table from him. She did not move. She did not look away. She simply sat with her hands flat on the table in front of her and her notebook closed and her full attention on his face. Present, steady, exactly where she said she would be. Sue, Chairman Lim said. His voice was the same as it always was. Low, measured, carrying the specific weight of a man who has never needed volume to communicate that something serious is happening. But underneath it, detectable only to someone who had been reading him for 12 years, was something Sue had heard from him only twice before in all that time. Not anger. Something colder than anger. The specific register of a man who has understood that he has lost control of a situation and is now calculating what can be salvaged from the loss. Chairman Lim, Sue said. The ledger, Chairman Lim said. It appears that retrieving it was insufficient. Yes, Sue said. A pause. You knew about the copy, Chairman Lim said. Not a question. Yes, Sue said. Another pause. Longer. And the archivist, Chairman Lim said carefully. She is not handled. No, Sue said. She is not. The line was quiet for a moment. Sue sat with the silence and let it be what it was. The specific silence of 12 years of accumulated trust being measured against what had just been confirmed, being weighed, being evaluated for what it meant and what came next. Why? Chairman Lim said finally. One word. The same question Grace had asked him twice. The same question he had been asking himself since the moment he walked into the document processing room and found her sitting on the floor with the ledger in her lap, and made a decision that he had not fully understood yet but had not been able to unmake. Because it was the right thing, Sue said. The same answer he had given Grace. Simple. True. Insufficient as an explanation to a man like Chairman Lim, and both of them knew it. Chairman Lim was quiet for a long moment. The document is already moving, he said. My people tell me it is with journalists, legal teams, a regulatory body. Another pause. You know what this means for the organization? Yes, Sue said. And you did this anyway, Chairman Lim said. I did not do it, Sue said carefully. I chose not to prevent it. Those are different things. In my world, Chairman Lim said quietly, they are the same thing. Sue held the phone and looked at Grace across the table and thought about 12 years. About his father. About the hand on the shoulder in the photograph and the weight of everything passed down, and the specific cost of inheriting something you did not choose and carrying it for long enough that you forgot it was possible to put it down. Chairman Lim, he said, I have something to offer you. A pause. I am listening, Chairman Lim said. The copy of the ledger, Sue said. The one that is currently moving through journalists and legal teams and a regulatory body. It contains names. Many names. Some of those names belong to people inside this organization. Some belong to people outside it who have been partners of this organization for a long time. He paused. The documentation that has been released is comprehensive, but the contact who holds the original copy, the person who's been managing its release, has the ability to control which names surface first and which names surface later, and how much context surrounds each one when it does. The line was very quiet. What are you proposing, Chairman Lim said. The voice of a man who is still calculating, who has not made a decision yet, but is listening because the calculation requires more information before it can complete. A separation, Sue said. The organization's connection to the government officials in that ledger becomes the story. The organization itself, its internal structure, its people, its current operations, remains outside the frame of what is released. He paused. The partners who enabled the corruption take the weight of it. The organization steps back from those partnerships and survives. You are offering me a controlled burn, Chairman Lim said. I am offering you the only version of this that leaves anything standing, Sue said. The line was silent for a long time, long enough that Sue counted the seconds. Something he had not done since he was young and afraid of silences, and the counting of them was less about the seconds and more about having something to do while waiting for something he could not control the outcome of. He had reached 41 when Chairman Lim spoke again. What do you want in return? Chairman Lim said. 2 things, Sue said. The archivist is untouchable. Permanently. No one connected to this organization moves against her, threatens her, or interferes with her life in any way for any reason. That is non-negotiable. And the second thing, Chairman Lim said. I am out, Sue said simply. Completely. Cleanly. With the same understanding that applies to her. No one moves against me. I walk away and the door closes behind me, and that is the end of it. The line was silent again. Shorter this time. You are asking me to lose my best enforcer and accept a controlled exposure of 30 years of partnership in exchange for organizational survival, Chairman Lim said. Yes, Sue said. And if I refuse, Chairman Lim said. Then the release is uncontrolled, Sue said. Every name, every transaction, every connection, all of it, at once, with full context. The silence that followed was the longest one yet. Sue sat with it. He did not fill it. He did not soften it. He simply let it sit between them on the phone line and waited for the calculation to complete in the mind of the man who had been running it for 12 years and understood, better than most, what the numbers actually meant. Grace had not moved across the table. Her hands were still flat on the surface in front of her. Her eyes were still on his face. She was reading him the way she read everything, completely, building the picture, waiting. He looked at her. She gave him the smallest nod. Not encouragement, confirmation. The specific confirmation of someone who has run the same calculation independently and arrived at the same answer, and is letting him know. Chairman Lim spoke. "The archivist is untouchable," he said, the voice of a man stating terms rather than conceding them, preserving, in the only way left available to him, the dignity of a man who has spent 30 years never losing. "Permanently. And you are out. Cleanly." "Yes," Sue said. "And the release is controlled," Chairman Lim said. "I will make the call within the hour," Sue said. Another pause. "The last one. You were the best person I ever put in a difficult situation," Chairman Lim said quietly. Not warmly. With the specific acknowledgement of a man who respects capability even when it has just been used against him. "It is a waste." "Perhaps," Sue said. "Or perhaps it is the first good use I have made of it." Chairman Lim hung up. Sue set the phone down on the table. The kitchen was very quiet. Grace looked at him across the table. She looked at him the way she had looked at him from the beginning, completely, without flinching, without performing anything, just seeing what was actually there. "It worked," she said. "Yes," he said. "You are out," she said. "Yes," he said. She was quiet for a moment. "How do you feel?" she asked. Not as a formality, as a genuine question. The kind she asked about everything she actually wanted to know the answer to. He thought about it honestly. "Like someone who has been carrying something for a very long time," he said. "And has just put it down? And is not yet sure what to do with the hands that were holding it." She looked at him. "That is a very honest answer," she said. "You asked an honest question," he said. She almost smiled. He almost smiled back. Then she picked up her phone and called Dr. Yoon. The professor answered on the first ring. "I need you to adjust the release," Grace said. "The organizational names. Pull them back. The government partners. Let those go through as planned. Full context on the partnerships. The corruption and who enabled it. But the internal organizational structure stays out of the frame." A pause. "Grace," Dr. Yoon said carefully. "Are you certain?" "Yes," Grace said. "The people who used public office to protect private criminal interest are the story. That is what this was always about. That is what the ledger was always for." Dr. Yoon was quiet for a moment. "All right," she said. "I will make the adjustments." "Thank you," Grace said. "For everything. Come and find me when this is done," Dr. Yoon said. "I want to hear the whole story properly over dinner." "You will," Grace said. She hung up. She set her phone down on the table beside Sue's. They sat across from each other in Min's small kitchen at the end of a paper trail on the outskirts of Seoul, and neither of them said anything for a long time. Outside, the city hummed in the middle distance, going about its business the way it always did, indifferent and unhurried, and completely unaware that somewhere inside it a document was finishing its journey through 3 journalists and 2 legal teams and a regulatory body, and was about to become the loudest thing in it for a very long time. And inside a small kitchen, 2 people sat across from each other and felt the specific quiet of a situation that is just resolved. Not cleanly, not without cost, but completely. In the way that things resolve when everyone involved has finally told the truth. Min appeared in the kitchen doorway. He had been outside for the duration of the call, which was simply Min understanding without being told what the moment required. He looked at Sue. Sue looked back. "It is done," Sue said. Min nodded once. Then he went to the kettle and filled it and turned it on, which was, from Min, the equivalent of a standing ovation. 3 days later, Sue walked back into the community archive on the eastern side of Seoul. It was a Thursday morning, early autumn still. The light through the archive windows was the same as it had been the first morning he walked through the door with a leather portfolio and a cover story and the intention of being there for 2 hours maximum. Grace was at her desk. She looked up when he came in. Not surprised, not performing surprise, just the expression of someone who had been waiting to see if he would come and was now finding out that he had. He sat down across from her. She looked at him. "How are you?" she said, still figuring that out. He said honestly, "But better than I was." She nodded slowly. "The story broke this morning," she said. "I saw it." "Yes," he said. "It is loud," she said. "Yes," he said. "It is going to be loud for a while." She looked at him steadily. "Are you safe?" she asked. "Yes," he said. "The agreement holds." Chairman Lim is a practical man. The controlled burn is serving its purpose. He has no reason to deviate from the terms. She held his gaze for a moment, reading him, the way she always read him, arriving at her own conclusion before she said anything. "I believe you," she said. He looked at her across the desk. This woman who had been 3 moves ahead of him since the second day, who had made a copy on the third day, who had sat on the floor of the document processing room and looked up at him and asked the right question, who had built a plan in a safe house kitchen and executed it with the specific calm of someone who knows what they are for. "I owe you something," he said. She looked at him. "What?" "An honest introduction," he said. "My name is Sue. I am 32 years old. I used to want to be an architect. I am trying to figure out what comes next." He paused. "It is very nice to meet you." She looked at him for a long moment. Then she reached across the desk and held out her hand. "Grace," she said, "I am a librarian. I notice things. And I am very glad you came back." He took her hand. They shook hands across the desk of a community archive on a Thursday morning in early autumn in a city that was currently very busy being loud about something that had needed to be loud about for a very long time. And outside Seoul went on. Indifferent, unhurried, the way it always did. And inside the archive, 2 people sat across from each other at a small desk and began, quietly and without ceremony, to figure out what came next.